right, folks, let's talk about a huge case that will go before the Supreme Court in the fall. Deals with the issue of political gerrymandering. Okay, the case comes out of Wisconsin, and it could change, again, all congressional districts nationwide. Now, the case centers on whether the state's Republican-controlled legislature redrew the electoral districts in 2011 to benefit Republicans, what is known as partisan gerrymandering. In November, a panel of 3 federal appeals court judges ruled that what lawmakers did was unfairly biased against Democratic voters. While the court has ruled on racial gerrymandering, where minority voters are disenfranchised, it has never ruled on purely partisan gerrymandering. The court can also decide how much redrawing is too much, where it goes so far as to violate voters' First Amendment and equal rights protections. Wisconsin's Republican Governor Scott Walker said he welcomed the court's intervention and predicted his party will be victorious.
Good thing. I said all along that I felt the law passed years ago on redistricting was constitutional. Felt strong that the United States Supreme Court would ultimately uphold it, so they're taking it up today as a good thing. We believe that they will ultimately uphold the law, and we'll be able to continue to move forward.
Yesterday, the court voted 5-4 to stay a request that would require Wisconsin to file a new plan by November 1st. The court's 4 liberal justices opposed that ruling. Clearly, the key judge is going to be Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Joining us via FaceTime from D.C. is Paul Smith, Vice President of Litigation and Strategy at the Campaign Legal Center, who will argue the case before the Supreme Court. So, Paul, gerrymandering goes back, centuries, and it was named after an actual public official. Both parties obviously have been involved in political gerrymandering. But what we've seen, though, no party has embraced this more in the past 20 years than Republicans. We saw in Texas, where normally you redraw the lines every 10 years after the census. Well, when Tom DeLay was in Congress, he drove this effort mid-census in Texas to flip a number of seats from Democrats to Republican.
He did indeed. It was a very effective gerrymander that they did back in mid-decade, 10 years or so ago. But this one was done right at the beginning of the decade. The Republicans got complete control for the first time in decades in Wisconsin, and they pushed and pushed and pushed to make the most biased map they could. And so we're hoping that the Supreme Court will agree with the lower court that this goes too far. It's just unconstitutional.
And one of the things that they do, you talk about how these oddly shaped districts, what they'll also do is they'll shave off black voters and Latino voters from different districts, pack them into Democratic districts so they won't have an impact on Republican districts. That's one of the reasons why we have very few competitive congressional seats left.
Right. The way you do a gerrymander is either pack all the Democrats into districts that are 90% Democratic, or you scatter the rest of them around in districts that are 40% Democratic. And so there's a tremendous amount of wasted votes. And your votes, on the other hand, if you're Republicans, are much more efficiently distributed. So it does end up making most of the districts non-competitive. Everybody knows this is supposed to be a Republican district or a Democratic district. And it guarantees that with 50% of the votes statewide, you're going to get 65% of the seats.
And then what happens is, and what people don't understand, this goes beyond congressional seats. This impacts state rep, state senate. And so, that's one of the reasons why you also have seen, after the 2010 midterm elections, Republicans take control of more state legislatures.
They made a real effort to do that very effectively. It's not that the Democrats are innocent, but the Republicans have just been much more effective at taking control of state legislatures and governorships at the right time. Right after the census then comes at the end of the decade, and all the lines have to be redrawn again in 2011. It's going to happen again in 2021. So the elections that are coming up for Democrats and Republicans have that same consequence. Who's in power in 2020 will be very important.
And you're absolutely right. So we'll have, of course, a midterm election next year. And this Supreme Court decision could lay the groundwork to either fair districts in 2020, or all hell would break loose if they rubber stamp Republicans' efforts for gerrymandering.
Yeah, and we certainly hope we're going to be able to find the 5 votes to say this is finally time to deal with this problem. One of the things this case has, unlike prior cases, is we have really good ways of measuring the degree of gerrymandering, and we can show that Wisconsin, this is actually a state assembly map, is at the very far end of the most biased map that's out there. It has been out there in any state in the whole country for the last 40 years. So that we hope will at least get us a 5th vote.
And when we say a 5th vote, you're really appealing to Justice Anthony Kennedy.
Well, we certainly are. He was the middle vote in the last case that I argued back in 2004. And he said if we could come up with a way of drawing the line, giving me a measurement, then he might very well be available. So certainly the case is geared to him. We also have no idea where new Justice Gorsuch might be on this issue. Well, we'll just have to hope for the best on that sort of thing with a new justice.
All right. Well, Paul Smith, certainly good luck with that. And hopefully the Supreme Court will rule in the right way where we have fair districts, because I can tell you right now, it's nonsensical to me to have these clearly Republican and Democratic seats. Competition is always good.
Thanks very much. I certainly agree with you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Let's go quickly to our panel. Again, we've seen, Avis, Republicans, again, we saw it in Texas, we saw it in North Carolina, we've seen it in a number of states, in Florida as well, where Republicans there have an 81-seat advantage, which is unbelievable in a state that's always competitive in presidential races. But to have that sort of thing out of balance, that says, oh, that was some rigging going on of districts.
Absolutely. One thing I can say about the Republicans, I got to give them kudos on this. When they're in power, they just go for broke. Okay, they don't care. They don't care.
Fairness. What the hell?
Care.
Out the window.
Get optics.
They just go.
No, it's not optics.
No optics. I know
it's
no
facts.
optics.
Exactly.
Yeah, they go for it.
They do. They go for broke. There's no, trying to be fair. There's no trying to be, some way kind of make the argument that you're trying to do the right thing. It's like, let's get as much power as we can for as long as we can. And certainly redistricting is one of the best ways to do that, because you tilt the balance of power in your favor literally for a decade at least.
And I've long been in favor of redistricting reform. I don't think legislators should pick their voters. Voters should pick the legislators. But I like how you always like to frame it as Republican versus Democrat. As you know, Maryland is one of the most prolific in gerrymandering. They actually have a federal lawsuit right now pending where Democrats have used the power of the legislator to draw districts that favor them.
Though.
Maryland, Illinois, California. Hold up, California did it until they passed law locally to take it out the hands of them. So both sides do it.
I recall.
Right now,
I recall. Yeah. When I interviewed Paul, I said Republicans and Democrats.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And I recall when I interviewed Paul, I said that. But the one party that has been far more egregious in doing this has been Republicans in the last 20 years. One second, in the last 20 years. So I stated a fact.
Right.
Now, don't somehow say I didn't chastise Democrats who do it in the last. No, it's not in passing. Okay. I was very explicit, Angela, in my criticism of Democrats. So
and I think you
nice try, Brandon.
No, it was a passing. It was a footnote. It was a footnote in your comments.
I think
it was a footnote in your comments. I want to make sure we're clear.
Go ahead.
Very clear.
Footnote or not, and you could say Democrats and Republicans both have done redistricting issues, but Republicans, when you look at the voter ID laws, changing early voting rules, redistricting, there is an attempt to, they recognize they can't fight demographic shifts. And so what they're trying to do is to rig the system. We see this over and over again, and that is a squarely Republican move.
A peaceful protest turned deadly. 37-year-old black man was shot and killed by Baton Rouge police. His hands are in the air, and you still get shot by the cops.
Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead.
We're not gonna let hate define us.
Race is a big part of this.
If truly all lives matter, then all lives need to matter equally. What we require is action. What we require is accountability. We understand that black lives do matter, and we will keep focused on this issue.
NewsOne Now, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.